encounter. The twin suns of Fex 5 glared overhead like molten eyes as Reed Holden stepped out of the rented hovercar, his boots crunching against the crystalline pavement. The air shimmered with heat and the strange humming vibration of a living planet. Slung over his shoulder was a duffel bag containing his essentials, though none of them prepared him for what he was about to experience. The structure looming before him was both magnificent and alien, a tower of iridescent glass and stone, refracting light into impossible colors. He paused for a breath, taking in the sharp contrast between Earth's organic warmth and this city's unfeeling precision. Renting an apartment site unseen had been reckless, but the price had been unbeatable. Unit 731. He muttered the number under his breath while scanning a directory that pulsed with light when touched. The system chirped in response, and the elevator whooshed open. Inside the lift, silence enveloped him like a cocoon. He ascended quickly to the 7th floor, nerves starting to stir. He wasn't sure if it was the odd scent in the air, something between ozone and lavender, or the fact that he was about to share living quarters in a foreign species capital. The elevator doors parted to reveal a smooth curved hallway of pearlescent metal ending in a door that shimmered like a soap bubble. He approached and pressed the intercom. A soft chime played and the door slid open. Standing there was a vision that defied every Earth standard of beauty and replaced it with something infinitely more alluring and unsettling. The woman, humanoid in shape but alien in every detail, had emerald green skin that glowed faintly, amethyst eyes that shimmered with intelligence, and hair like rippling sea foam. She wore a translucent, shimmering tunic that hugged her lithe figure, swaying like water with every breath. "Ah," she said, her voice a melodic song that stirred something deep in Reed's chest. "You must be the new tenant." "I am Qix'ala, your landlady. Please come in." Reed blinked, stunned by the sight of her. Yes. Reed Holden." He extended a hand instinctively. She tilted her head, puzzled, before delicately grasping it with both of hers. Her skin was cool and unexpectedly smooth. "Welcome, Reed Holden," she said formally, releasing his hand. "Your quarters are this way." He followed her through the living space, which seemed carved from glass and light. Prismatic furniture glistened in corners, while glowing plants in floating pots emitted soft, intoxicating scents. Every surface seemed alive. Qix'ala's dress whispered with every movement, and Reed had to remind himself to keep his eyes respectful. She opened a door and gestured inside. "This is your sleeping chamber. It includes a panoramic view of the city and a sanitation unit through that door." Reed nodded, trying to sound casual. "This is incredible. Thank you." She gave him a small smile and turned away. "I will leave you to get settled. If you require anything, speak to the wall." Reed chuckled lightly. "Got it." Once alone, he tossed his bag onto the bed and made a beeline for the sanitation chamber. Days of interstellar travel had left him feeling like a barnacle-covered hull. He stepped into the shower chamber, a seamless blend of open space waterfall faucet and ambient lighting, and quickly stripped, welcoming the cascade of warm liquid as it rolled down his back. His muscles relaxed. His mind began to unwind until the bathroom door suddenly slid open. Reed turned, startled, as Qix'ala stepped in. She froze, her eyes widening as they locked onto his naked, dripping form. "Oh, stars above," she whispered, fascinated. "Human male, why do you have a miniature Shai-Hulud between your legs?" Reed shouted, covering himself instinctively. "What the hell? Do you not knock?" Qix'ala blinked, completely unaffected by his nudity or fury. "Is that normal for your species? It looks aggressive, coiled like a sandworm preparing to strike." His face went crimson. "It's called a penis. And yes, it's normal. Completely standard human anatomy." "Ah." Qix'ala nodded slowly, then smiled apologetically. "Forgive me." I forgot that humans have peculiar taboos about bodily functions. I merely came to inform you that dinner will be served in half a rotation. Then, just as casually, she turned and walked out, leaving a flustered, half-aroused, and wholly confused Reed standing naked in the steam. He rinsed off in record time, towel-dried in a daze, and dressed quickly in a fresh outfit. The image of Qix'ala's amused expression and her surprisingly bold commentary lingered in his mind like a puzzle and a provocation. What exactly had he signed up for? As he exited the chamber, the scent of alien spices drifted toward him. Qix'ala was setting out dinner on a low-floating table. She turned, smiling brightly. "Join me, read Holden." He exhaled and sat down beside her. And as the strange meal began, so too did the unraveling of his world. Bodies, cultures, and seduction. The meal was a kaleidoscope of unfamiliar colors, textures, and scents. Qix'ala had laid out a dazzling array of dishes that glowed faintly, pulsed with bioluminescence, or emitted a gentle vapor that smelled vaguely of cinnamon and ozone. Reed hesitated for a moment before picking up a spoon that looked like a cross between a ladle and a tuning fork. Qix'ala laughed softly. "You look like you're about to defuse a bomb." "I just don't want to accidentally eat something that'll melt my insides," Reed replied with a grin, scooping up a jelly-like mound that quivered ominously. To his surprise, it tasted like chilled mango with a hint of mint. "Okay, not lethal, that's a good start." Qix'ala tilted her head, observing him with an amused expression. "It pleases me to see you enjoy it. I prepared the dishes to accommodate human digestion, though I confess your species' biochemistry remains endlessly complex." Reed chuckled, relaxing slightly. "Yeah, we're a mess of quirks. Allergies, weird enzymes, taboos about nudity apparently." "Ah yes," she said with a teasing smile, taking a sip from a glass of fizzy purple liquid. "The penis. I hope I didn't offend you earlier." Reed nearly choked on his drink, coughing as his face turned beet red. "Wow, you really just... Okay. No offense taken, just maybe knock next time." "Of course," she said innocently, though her eyes gleamed with mischief. "Though I must admit it was fascinating." Reed wasn't sure if it was the alien wine or the intensity of her gaze, but his pulse spiked. Qix'ala leaned in, a little resting her elbow on the low table, her eyes locked onto his. So she said smoothly, "This reproductive organ of yours, it functions through insertion, correct?" Reed dropped his spoon. Yes. I mean, it's sexual intercourse, yeah. That's how we procreate." "Fascinating." She breathed, her expression curious, not lewd. "In my culture, we engage in a sacred dance beneath the 7 moons. The movement, synchronized heartbeat, and shared breath generate a spiritual field. From that new life emerges no physical fusion necessary." "That's beautiful," Reed said honestly. "Much more elegant than our system. Ours is messy." Qix'ala laughed, a sound like distant wind chimes. "Perhaps, but you speak with reverence. You find beauty in it too." "I suppose I do," Reed admitted, then quickly changed the subject. "So you're not just a landlady, right? You mentioned cultural liaison." "I assist human visitors in adapting to our customs," Qix'ala said. "Though you're the first to move into my personal residence. That makes you special." Reed's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Is that professional or something else?" Her eyes sparkled. "Would it bother you if it were something else?" The air between them thickened, the warm glow of the room casting flickers of light across her scales. Reed realized suddenly that they were sitting much closer than he remembered. He cleared his throat. "So, flirting. You wanted to understand flirting." Qix'ala leaned forward slightly, her sea-foam hair spilling across her shoulder. "Yes, seduction, Earth style. Show me." Reed's heart thudded in his chest. This wasn't some theoretical inquiry, this was an invitation. He hesitated only a moment before lifting a hand, brushing a lock of hair behind her pointed ear. His knuckles grazed the delicate ridge of her jaw. Flirting, he said softly, is about teasing, building anticipation. It's a dance just like your moon ritual, a promise of what could be if both partners are willing. Qix'ala's breath caught. And are you willing, Reed Holden? He met her gaze, eyes flicking down to her lips. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She was luminous, curious, bold. And yet within her questions was a sincerity that disarmed him. His body responded before his mind could fully process the implications. But then the weight of his mission returned like cold water. I made a vow, he murmured, pulling back slightly. No romantic entanglements during my assignment. Her face didn't fall, but the flicker in her eyes dimmed just slightly. An oath of celibacy. For focus. For professionalism, he said, though it sounded hollow even to his ears. Qix'ala studied him for a long moment. A noble sentiment, but perhaps short-sighted. He chuckled, unable to hide his admiration. You don't pull punches. I find human restraint both admirable and frustrating, she said, but I will respect it, for now. A sudden distant boom shook the building. Reed bolted upright. What the hell? Alarms blared overhead and an automated voice echoed in both common and Felian warning. Hull breach detected. Raiders incoming. Seek shelter. Qix'ala was already on her feet. Quickly she shouted, we must reach the panic chamber. She seized his hand and for once Reed didn't hesitate. They sprinted toward a panel that slid aside, revealing a hidden vault of reinforced alloy. Another explosion rocked the structure as they dove inside the door ceiling behind them. Inside the panic room, darkness gave way to pulsing emergency lights. The space was tight, barely large enough for two adults. Reed found himself pressed against Qix'ala, her curves molded against his chest, her breath warm on his neck. Looks like that flirting lesson is on pause, he said breathlessly. Qix'ala looked up at him, her eyes glowing in the red light. But it will be resumed, she whispered, her voice a promise wrapped in fire. Reed's heart pounded. They were under attack, his life upended, his mission compromised. Yet all he could think about was her, the alien woman who had turned his world inside out. And the realization was clear, he didn't want her out of it. Beneath the skin, secrets. They emerged from the panic chamber to find the apartment in disarray, furniture, overturned scorch marks on the walls, shards of glowing crystal littering the floor like shattered dreams. Qix'ala moved with calm precision, checking hidden compartments, scanning readouts on the walls, muttering soft phrases in her native tongue. Reed stood back for a moment, watching her, caught between awe and growing concern. That wasn't a random raid, was it? He asked. Qix'ala's face tightened. No, someone wanted to send a message. Reed stepped closer. To you? To us, she said quietly. But yes, primarily me. She said nothing more, and Reed didn't press. The silence between them was heavy, not awkward but charged, like they both knew something had shifted. Something fragile and powerful now tethered them beyond curiosity and chemistry. When she turned to face him, her expression had softened. You should contact your superiors, she said. Tell them what happened. He nodded and sent a secure transmission through his comlink explaining the attack in clipped clinical terms. But nothing about the way Qix'ala had clutched his arm in the dark. Nothing about how his heart had nearly exploded when he thought she might be hurt. That wasn't part of the mission log. Later that evening, after the repair drones had restored basic functionality, they found themselves seated together on the same cushion-lined couch where the dinner had begun so innocently. The silence had returned, not cold, but contemplative. Qix'ala broke it first. You risked your life to protect me. You risked yours to get me to safety, Reed countered. Seems fair. She smiled faintly, a little wistful. Most males of my species wouldn't have. Well, he said with a chuckle, I'm not most males of any species. Qix'ala leaned back, the glowing plants around them, casting shifting shadows over her skin. For the first time, Reed noticed subtle patterns, faint scales tracing down her collarbone and disappearing beneath the edge of her tunic. They shimmered in the light like starlight caught in water. You're staring, she murmured. Sorry, he said, blinking. I was just... The patterns on your skin, they're beautiful. They mark lineage, she explained. Each scale tells a story, ancestry, spiritual attunement, even potential mates. Reed raised an eyebrow. And what do yours say? Qix'ala's gaze didn't waver. That I am rare, and that I was once destined for someone powerful, Fox Reed guessed. She nodded. He was formidable, respected, but controlling, possessive. When I left him, I broke not just a bond, but a prophecy. He hasn't forgiven me. Reed exhaled slowly. You think he's behind the attack? I don't think she said. I know. The weight of her confession settled over them like a storm cloud. Reed reached out, hesitated, then let his hand settle gently atop hers. You don't have to face him alone. Her eyes flicked to their hands, then back to his. You barely know me, Reed Holden. I know enough, he said. I know your laughter fills a room. I know your curiosity is as sharp as your wit. I know that even in crisis you stay calm. And I know I'd rather be in this apartment under fire with you than safe and bored back on Earth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, Tell me more about Earth. So he did. He told her about his childhood in the rust-colored deserts of Arizona, where sandstorms roared like dragons and stars blanketed the sky in ancient light. About his fascination with biology, how he used to dig up bugs just to sketch their anatomy. About his first heartbreak, his decision to become a xenobiologist, and the bittersweet pride of leaving Earth to explore new worlds. In return, Qix'ala spoke of the sacred groves of Felian youth, of songs sung in frequencies too high for humans to hear, of crystalline gardens that bloomed only during solar eclipses. Her stories painted a world of elegance and danger, a civilization older than Earth's recorded history, ruled by intuition and spiritual resonance rather than logic and power. You make your world sound like a dream, Reed said softly. Qix'ala tilted her head. And you make yours sound like a wound that keeps healing. He smiled. That's a poetic way to describe humanity. They sat close now, their knees brushing. A comfortable silence fell again, different from before this, one rich with unspoken permission. Reed's hand slid from hers to her cheek, brushing lightly along the curve of her jaw. Qix'ala, he said, voice husky. She leaned into his touch. Yes. Tell me to stop, he said. She didn't. Their kiss was slow exploratory, not the desperate clash of passion, but the gentle ignition of a long simmering flame. Her lips were cool and soft, tasting faintly of citrus and starlight. His hand tangled in her seafoam hair as she drew him closer, her body molding against his like puzzle pieces, long separated. When they parted, breathless and wide-eyed, neither spoke. The moment didn't need words. Qix'ala rose slowly and extended her hand. Come, she whispered. Reed hesitated for a heartbeat, then took her hand. She led him not to her bedroom, but to the balcony. The alien city stretched out before them, towers gleaming, twin moons rising. For a moment, they just stood together, hand in hand, gazing into the unfamiliar. Everything's changing, isn't it? Reed murmured. Qix'ala nodded. Yes, and I no longer fear it. Neither did he. The first quake. The sky over Fex 5 was unnaturally still. Reed stood on the balcony, gazing out across the crystalline skyline that shimmered like a frozen ocean of glass and energy. The twin suns had begun their descent, casting jagged shadows across the alien city. Behind him, the apartment remained silent. Too silent. He turned, re-entering the living space with cautious steps. Qix'ala was standing in front of a control panel, her brows furrowed, fingers moving across glowing glyphs that pulsed with urgency. You feel it too? He asked. I do, she murmured. There's something wrong. I've tried to access the central monitoring grid, but my access codes are being rejected. Reed frowned. Someone tampered with your credentials, or someone overrode them. That was all the warning they got. The apartment shook violently, a low pulsing tremor that grew into a deafening quake. Reed stumbled, catching himself against a pillar. Lights flickered. Dishes shattered. A painting dissolved into ash. Earthquake, Reed asked, already knowing better. Qix'ala's voice was sharp. No, that was a surface explosion. External ordnance. Another blast followed closer this time. A pane of the transparent outer wall cracked down the center like a sheet of ice. Reed's instincts screamed, "We need to go, now!" Qix'ala grabbed his hand and dragged him across the room toward a concealed panel. With a swift palm strike, the wall split open, revealing a compact corridor lined with panic lighting. The moment they stepped inside, the entry sealed shut behind them. "This leads to a sub-level vault," Qix'ala said, already sprinting. "It's not registered on the city's schematics." Off-grid, Reed asked. "Completely." They burst into a spherical chamber that looked like the interior of a crystal geode, smooth, round walls, embedded with shimmering veins of energy. It thrummed with life, sealed from the chaos above. Only then did they breathe. "Tell me what's going on," Reed said. Qix'ala hesitated, then spoke carefully. "That wasn't a random raid. That was a coordinated strike. Precision targeted. My enemies are moving faster than I anticipated." "Fox," she nodded. "It has his fingerprints all over it. He's escalating, and now that he knows about you, he'll stop at nothing." Reed clenched his fists. "I'm not leaving. If he thinks he can intimidate us, he doesn't want to intimidate Reed. He wants to erase." She paused, then said with chilling certainty, "He wants you dead." Reed's chest tightened. "Then let him come." Qix'ala stepped closer. "You don't understand. Fox isn't just a former lover or jealous ex. He's a high commander in the Felian inner circle. He can bend law, science, and culture to his will. He doesn't need to kill you with his own hands. He has others who would do it gladly. Officially. Legally. And you think I'm just going to crawl back to Earth with my tail between my legs?" She shook her head. "No, you wouldn't. And that's what scares me." Silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of truths too long delayed. Reed took a step forward. His hand found her arm fingers, tracing the edge of one delicate scale along her bicep. "Tell me everything," he said. "No more holding back." She looked up at him, and for the first time the fire in her eyes flickered with something softer. "I broke a sacred bond to be free. I broke tradition, prophecy, and reputation. But I never regretted it, not until you arrived." He frowned. "Why?" "Because now, for the first time, I have someone I'm terrified to lose." Her voice cracked on the last word. Reed reached out and pulled her to him. She didn't resist. Her head rested against his chest, and for a long moment they stood like that, a human and an alien, caught in the eye of a storm that neither of them had chosen, but both refused to flee. Finally, Reed whispered, "You don't have to protect me. Let me fight with you." "I was afraid you'd say that," she murmured against his shirt. "I mean it." She pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. "Then you'll need to be trained." Reed smirked. "What you gonna teach me, Felian kung fu?" Her eyes glimmered. "Something like that. But first," the lights in the chamber dimmed, then pulsed blood red. "Breach in primary floor," an automated voice droned. "Vault structural integrity at 87%. Reed's smirk vanished. "How did they find us?" "I don't know," Qix'ala hissed. "But they're not supposed to be able to." The wall behind them shuddered. "They're tunneling down," she realized. "They want to flush us out." Reed scanned the room. "Is there another exit?" Qix'ala's fingers flew across a panel. A sliver of wall hissed open, revealing a tight vertical shaft with an anti-grav pulse chamber. "Only up," she said. "But it leads outside a service balcony." "Let's go." She stepped in first, the lift shooting them silently through the interior of the tower. They emerged into night. Smoke plumed across the skyline. Fire raged along the street below. The city was in chaos, and someone had gone to great lengths to make sure Reed and Qix'ala were the center of it. Sirens wailed. Drones flew low. The apartment tower her home was burning. Qix'ala stared at it with silent fury. Reed turned to her. "We fight back. No more hiding." She nodded. "Then you'll need armor and a weapon." He raised a brow. "Got any human-sized—" She grinned for the first time that night. "I've been curious about your measurements." Despite the danger, he laughed. Beneath the burning sky, surrounded by destruction, it was the only sound that didn't feel like surrender. The line between reason and desire. The safe house Qix'ala led him to was nothing like the crystalline elegance of her apartment. Hidden beneath an old decommissioned transport hub, it was carved into the rock itself, rough, dimly lit, and silent. But it was secure, and right now, that was all that mattered. Reed sat on a padded bench near the wall, stripping off the lightweight armor Qix'ala had given him. Sweat clung to his skin. Smoke and dust still lingered in his lungs. Every muscle ached from adrenaline withdrawal. And yet, it wasn't the attack or the escape or even Fox that consumed his mind. It was her. Qix'ala moved gracefully around the small chamber, checking seals and diagnostics. Her tunic was soot-streaked and torn in places, revealing flashes of green skin beneath. Her hair, usually pinned, now hung loose, trailing like a living river down her back. She looked wild, dangerous, beautiful. "You okay?" Reed asked, his voice hoarse. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was soft. "I should be asking you that." Reed stood slowly. "I've been shot at before. But not for this reason," she said, turning to face him. "Not because of who you chose to be close to." He stepped closer. "I didn't choose you to make a statement." "I know." Her eyes searched his. "But you still made one. And now, we both have to live with the consequences." Reed nodded. "I can live with that. I'm just not sure I can keep living in this limbo." She tilted her head. "Limbo. This thing between us," he said. "It's been building since the day I arrived. I've told myself a dozen times to walk away, to stay focused on the mission, to honor the vow I made before I left Earth. And yet you stayed," she whispered. "I stayed," he confirmed. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken truths. The hum of the air vents, the crackle of energy from a backup generator, everything seemed to fade as she stepped toward him. "Then stop fighting it." "Reed Holden," she murmured. "We've run, we've bled, we've burned. And through it all, you still look at me like I'm a miracle and a mystery. So stop running from what you already chose." He reached out, brushing the back of his fingers along her cheekbone. Her skin was cool but warming fast. She leaned into his touch, her eyes half-lidded. "You're right," he said quietly. "I chose you, even when I told myself I didn't." Their lips met, not with hesitation, but with fire. This time, there were no barriers, no vows to restrain them, no mission logs or political consequences to stand between the storm of want and the warmth of connection. He pulled her into his arms, her body pressing flush against his as her hands found their way into his hair, gripping tightly as though anchoring herself to reality. They stumbled backward together, colliding with the wall, the kiss deepening. Reed's hands roamed, discovering the texture of Felian skin, silky in some places, scaled in others. Her breath hitched as he traced the edge of a pulse point near her collarbone, her hands working quickly to remove his undershirt. "You're different than I imagined," she whispered against his lips. "Better or worse?" "Worse," she teased. "I imagine controlled, reserved, science-minded." He smirked, biting her lower lip lightly. "Guess I failed to meet expectations." "You've exceeded them in the most dangerous ways." Clothes fell away layer by layer, tunic belt trousers, until they stood exposed beneath the dim safety light. Reed took in every curve, every glowing line along her hips and thighs, every fleck of bioluminescence that responded to his touch. Qix'ala studied him with equal reverence, her fingers tracing the muscles of his chest, his stomach, his scars. For something so alien, she said softly, "You feel like home." And then there were no more words. They made love with a fierceness born not only of desire, but of defiance. Each kiss was a vow, each gasp a surrender. Reed lost himself in her in the press of her body, the rhythm of her breath, the sharp cry she let out when he finally entered her. She wrapped around him like flame, every movement a dance of want and wonder. There was no shame, no hesitancy, only mutual hunger and slow-burning reverence. The world narrowed to the space between their bodies, the slow build, the frantic pace, the shuddering release, and when they collapsed into each other, limbs tangled, chests heaving, nothing remained but the echo of their heartbeats. After a long silence, Qix'ala shifted slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "So much for your vow." Reed chuckled, breathless. "I regret nothing." She smiled, her fingers trailing down his chest. "Neither do I." They lay in the low light, pressed together, neither willing to move. Reed found his hand resting over her stomach, his thumb drawing lazy circles. "You said something earlier," he murmured, "about being terrified to lose me." She nodded slowly. "I still am. I'm not going anywhere." "You can't promise that," she said softly. "Not with Fox still out there. Not with what's coming." Reed turned, cupping her face in his hand. "Then we face it together. You and me. No more distance, no more denial." Qix'ala's eyes shimmered, a deep violet glow blooming in the center of each iris. Together, she agreed. They kissed again, this time, slowly, tenderly, like a secret spoken beneath the skin. And for the first time since arriving on Fex 5, Reed felt whole, no longer torn between duty and desire, no longer afraid to choose. The hybrid and the curse. The silence that followed their union was not one of awkwardness, but of gravity. Reed lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling of the safe house, listening to the steady cadence of Qix'ala's breathing beside him. Everything had changed, not just between them, but in him. Something ancient, cellular, and unrelenting had taken root. He turned his head slowly. She wasn't asleep. Qix'ala sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a loose tunic, staring at a glowing panel embedded in the wall. The soft bio-light danced across her back and shoulders, revealing the rise and fall of breath that was not quite steady. "Hey," Reed said gently. "Something wrong?" She didn't turn. "I ran a scan before you woke." That one sentence chilled him more than any siren. He sat up, fully alert now. "What kind of scan?" Qix'ala exhaled slowly. "A full-spectrum biodiagnostic. After what we just did, I needed to know." She tapped the panel, and a translucent hologram blossomed between them. It displayed twin heart signatures, one familiar, one faint and new. Not a metaphor, not symbolic. "Reed," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm pregnant." Time slowed. He stared at the readout, then at her, then back again. "You're sure?" "I've cross-verified 3 times," she said quietly. "The markers are undeniable. A viable embryo human and Felian hybrid." Reed's first reaction was disbelief. His second was awe. His third was fear. "A hybrid," he whispered. Qix'ala nodded slowly. "Our genetic material fused against every known compatibility index. It shouldn't be possible, but it is." "Yes." She turned to face him fully now, her expression unreadable. "And that's the problem." Reed frowned. "Wait, you're not upset, are you?" "No," she said quickly. "No, not upset. Just frightened. Because this isn't just unexpected, it's illegal." That word hit like a punch. Illegal. Interspecies gestation with a Felian host is forbidden under Planetary Code 7B9, not because of politics, because of what's happened before. Reed's heart thudded. "You mean this has happened before?" "Centuries ago," Qix'ala said, "during the First Contact era, when the Felian Empire was still expanding. Experimental unions occurred. Some produced viable offspring. What happened to them? They were powerful, unstable. Some died in infancy. Others developed gifts our people didn't understand. Telekinetic bursts, rapid aging neural resonance misfires. But what scared the elders most was that some survived and began changing our ecosystem. Reed's mouth went dry. Changing how? Phelians are connected to a planetary resonance field, a kind of energy grid tied to emotional stability. The hybrids disrupted that. They caused spiritual distortions, and wherever they lived, something broke weather patterns, fertility cycles, biological rhythms. The council called them the unbinding. And what did they do with them? Qix'ala's eyes turned cold. They hunted them, exterminated every last one. Reed stared at her, trying to process the enormity of what she just said. And now, this child, our child, will be seen as a threat, she finished. The minute anyone detects the anomaly, they'll invoke code purity, and then they'll come for you, he said flatly, and for the baby. Qix'ala looked down, her hand subconsciously drifting to her stomach. Yes. Reed stood pacing the room. We have to leave Fex 5 tonight. She looked up at him. And go where? Earth, or the Cerulean colonies. Somewhere without Phelian jurisdiction. You think your people will accept this any more than mine? I don't care what they accept, he snapped. This is my child, and I'll fight to keep both of you safe, from your laws, from mine, from the whole damn galaxy if I have to. Qix'ala rose and crossed the room, placing a hand gently on his chest. I believe you. Reed's breath hitched. Then come with me, now. She hesitated. There's something else. Please don't say triplets, he muttered. Qix'ala smiled faintly, then reached into a carved alcove. She retrieved a crystalline pendant oval, blue lit, etched with concentric circles. She held it toward him. This is a relic of the Moonborn. It belonged to an ancient Phelian oracle, and it glows in the presence of a soul that can reshape balance. Reed blinked. Reshape what? The collective resonance field. The spiritual architecture of a planet. Maybe more. It's never lit up in my lifetime. She handed it to him. The moment his fingers closed around it, the pendant pulsed. Hard. Qix'ala's eyes widened. I thought it might react to you. But it didn't just react. It flared a burst of light so strong it sent static through the air. Panels blinked. The lights flickered. Even the ground gave a slight tremble. Reed stared at the crystal in his hand. It's not reacting to me. It's reacting to what's inside me, Qix'ala said. Their child. They stared at each other, realization crashing over them like a tidal wave. This isn't just a pregnancy, she whispered. It's a prophecy. Reed clenched the relic in his fist. Then this child is going to terrify a lot of powerful people. Yes, she said. And one of them already knows. His eyes narrowed. Fox, she nodded. If he finds out, he'll unleash everything. The elders, the high judges, the assassins of the veiled path. Reed moved to the control panel, activating the long-range comms. Then we don't wait. We strike first. We go to the Institute. We bring the data. We show them what's coming. You think they'll believe us? No, Reed said. But they'll believe in survival, and this child might be the only key we have. Qix'ala stepped beside him, her hand slipping into his. Then let's make history. Outside, the second sun of Fex 5 began to set, casting the sky in violet flames. Shadows gathered across the city. But in the hidden chamber below, something new was forming. Something ancient. Something inevitable. Enemy of the circle. The meeting room at the Xenobiological Institute's forward base was sterile and cold, a far cry from the energy-drenched vibrance of Phelian architecture. Reed stood at the head of the long obsidian table, the pulse of the Moonborn relic glowing faintly at his chest. Beside him, Qix'ala remained poised calm, but her eyes missed nothing. Dr. Elizabeth Chen paced across the room, arms crossed. Let me make sure I understand. You're not just reporting a genetic anomaly. You're telling me the two of you have conceived a child that might, and I quote, disrupt the spiritual resonance field of an entire alien species. Reed met her gaze. That's exactly what I'm telling you. And you brought it here. It's not a virus, Liz, he snapped. It's a baby. Our baby. Dr. Rajesh Patel leaned forward, fingers steepled. Even so, this crosses every line of ethical and interspecies protocol we've ever established. Do you realize what happens if the High Council learns the Institute harbored a prohibited hybrid? We'll all be indicted, Chen added, exiled, or worse. Then help us, Reed said, lowering his voice, because we're not the threat. Fox is, and he's already moving. Dr. Mikhail Volov, seated silently until now, finally spoke. You said he attacked your apartment and tracked you to a vault that wasn't on any city record. Yes, Qix'ala said flatly. He's not acting alone. He has influence deep within the circle, possibly even access to off-world surveillance. Volov's expression darkened, but something flickered beneath it. Qix'ala caught it. She stepped forward. Unless someone gave him that access. The room went still. What are you implying? Volov asked, his Russian accent suddenly cold. I'm not implying anything, she said softly. I'm accusing. You've been to my home. You logged into our lab server, and your ID was flagged at the orbital data node 1 hour before the second attack. Reed stiffened. Wait, what? Volov didn't blink. You're mistaken. Patel frowned. Is that true? Chen turned to a control panel and tapped a few keys. A series of security logs appeared on the wall. Coordinates, timestamps, access credentials. Volov's name was everywhere. The silence cracked like thunder. You sold us out, Reed said quietly. You gave Fox our location. I protected humanity, Volov hissed. You let yourself get corrupted by that thing. He pointed at Qix'ala. You forgot what you were sent here to do. Chen stepped between them. Mikhail, for God's sake, that's a sentient being. She's manipulating him, Volov snapped. And now they've created a weapon that could destabilize an entire species, maybe more. You think this is about love? This is evolutionary war. You're wrong, Qix'ala said, her voice a blade of ice. This child is not a weapon, but you are. Volov's hand moved. Too fast. A hidden injector loaded with paralytic compound shot out from his wrist. But before it struck, Qix'ala moved her body, twisting midair with preternatural speed. The device clattered to the floor. She stood over him, one hand gripping his throat. You will not touch him, she growled. Volov gasped. You can't kill me. No, she said, but I can remove your voice. She struck a nerve cluster in his neck and he collapsed unconscious. Reed stared in disbelief. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Patel coughed. Okay, so we have a spy, a rogue Felian commander, and an unborn child that's lit up a planetary relic. Chen nodded. Sounds like Tuesday. What do we do? Reed asked. We can't run again. Not now. We don't, Qix'ala said. We expose Fox, publicly. Chen blinked. Expose him how? He still holds a seat on the circle, she explained. But if we can show that he acted in violation of Council Code, launching private attacks, suppressing scientific findings, endangering diplomatic relations with Earth, we can force a formal tribunal. And while that's happening, Reed asked. We bring the child into protection, Qix'ala replied. The relic's energy will keep them stable for now, but we must secure allies before the High Circle can react. Chen nodded slowly. Then we go public. Carefully. Through neutral channels. I'll draft a preliminary declaration. Patel turned to Reed. And you? Are you ready for this? Reed looked at Qix'ala. He thought of the child inside her, the hybrid no one wanted, the one the universe wasn't ready for. And he thought of the way she moved, the way she stood between him and danger, without hesitation. Ready, he said. I was made for this. But before anyone could respond, the room plunged into darkness. Emergency lights blinked red. An automated voice crackled through the walls. Alert. Perimeter breach. Incoming aerial incursion. Multiple heat signatures. Chin swore. How did they find us so fast? Qix'ala's voice was grim, because Volov was only the first. A detonation rocked the compound. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. Reed grabbed the relic, slinging it around his neck. We have to move, now. Qix'ala turned to Patel and Chen. Head to the underground vault. Lock it from the inside. We'll lead them away. You can't fight them alone, Chen shouted. Reed gave her a crooked smile. We're not alone. We're together. Qix'ala grabbed his hand and they ran into the smoke, into the fire, into the storm that had finally come for them. Behind them, alarm screamed. Ahead of them, war awaited. But between them, still burning, still unbroken, was the fire of something the enemy could never understand. Hope. The trial of fire. The walls shook violently as Reed and Qix'ala dashed through the underground corridor, their boots striking metal with frantic urgency. Sirens wailed overhead, shrill warnings of an incoming assault. The enemy had found them, not through accident, not through persistence, through intent. This was no longer a hunt. It was an execution. They breached the east perimeter. Qix'ala growled, scanning her wrist display. 10 hostiles cloaked, Felian Black Mantle units. Reed's blood turned cold. Assassins, she nodded. Sent by Fox himself. This isn't a recovery mission. They want the child dead, and you with it. They turned a corner just as the corridor behind them erupted in fire. The force threw them forward. Reed landed hard, pain shooting through his ribs. Qix'ala recovered faster, grabbing his arm and pulling him into a maintenance shaft. Inside, it was tight, dark, and stifling. The air tasted of burning steel and betrayal. Qix'ala's eyes glinted in the emergency light. She wasn't just a protector now. She was a soldier in a war no one else wanted to admit existed. We're heading to Hangar C, she whispered. There's an old shuttle there, off-grid, fast, but we'll have company. How much company? Reed asked, checking the charge on his rail pistol. Too much. The shaft ended in a grated crawl space that opened directly into the hangar's upper scaffolding. From there they could see the shuttle mat, black-scarred from age but intact, and guarding it 6 commandos in full tactical armor, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning. We can't shoot our way through, Reed whispered. No, Qix'ala replied, voice like ice, but we can bleed them first. She dropped silently from the scaffolding landing behind the farthest commando. Her blade whispered through air and armor alike. One down. The others turned just as Reed opened fire from above, drawing their attention. Qix'ala struck again, now a blur, spinning, stabbing, ducking under plasma shots. 2 more fell before the rest retaliated. A bolt grazed her arm. She flinched but pressed on. Reed leapt down, gritting his teeth, blasting another attacker in the chest. The impact cracked its armor and sent the body flying, smoke shouting metal chaos. One of the commandos reached the shuttle controls. No, Qix'ala shouted. She threw a pulse knife it embedded in the control panel and triggered a short burst of electricity. The commando screamed and collapsed. But now the hangar's far doors slammed open. Reinforcements. We're out of time, Reed shouted. They ran for the shuttle. Reed stumbled halfway, hit in the leg. He crawled the rest of the way. Qix'ala covered him, slicing down the last attacker with a roar that echoed in the steel chamber. Inside the cockpit, systems flickered to life under her fingers. We've got maybe 30 seconds, she said. Get strapped. Where are we going? He asked, breath ragged. To end this. She opened a secure channel, one known only to Felian High Command. The holo projector blinked, then materialized a face, Elder Tavarin, stoic and severe. Commander Qix'ala, he said slowly, you live. And Fox still breathes, she snapped. We both have work to do. This is not protocol. Protocol died when he sent killers after a pregnant human. Silence. I invoke the trial of fire, she continued. Publicly. Before the circle, Fox has betrayed the Concordat. I demand judgment. The elder's eyes narrowed. You understand what you're asking? I'm not asking. She transmitted the data sensor logs DNA scans the relic's pulse matched to the unborn child. Evidence of Fox's orders. Footage from the attack on the underground clinic. Tavarin took a long breath. The council will convene. You've lit a fuse. Qix'ala cut the channel. Reed stared at her. What's the trial of fire? A law older than our wars, she said. A final right to challenge corruption with truth. Once invoked, the entire circle must witness what's brought forward. In silence, in public. If they ignore it, the people rise. Reed blinked. You just turned us into a rebellion. She nodded. No more running. Warning lights flared. Missile locks. External turrets powered on. The hangar's targeting system had them marked. They're gonna blow us apart, Reed muttered. Qix'ala grinned. Then let them try. She launched the shuttle at full throttle. The engines screamed as they tore through the magnetic gate. Plasma fire followed. Explosions rocked the ship. One missile clipped their wing. Reed yelled as the shuttle spun, but Qix'ala recovered control. Ahead, skyfire and 100 hunter drones. Brace, she shouted. She triggered the shuttle's shield burst, a rare tech stolen from an abandoned moonborn vault. The blast wave pushed the drones off course, opening a narrow corridor between them. They punched through atmosphere. Behind them, the entire facility went up in flames. Explosives Qix'ala had planted in advance, not as sabotage, but as a message. Across the planet's comms network, the explosion broadcasted in real time, followed by one file, one voice. Qix'ala's voice invoking the trial. Within hours, rebellion cells across 3 sectors rose from silence, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. And in the center of the storm flew a damaged shuttle. Inside it, a dying soldier, a hunted child, and a warrior who just declared war on everything she once obeyed. The fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Judgment Day. The circle gathered in silence. 12 thrones forged from the bones of fallen stars stood in a ring above the Citadel's tribunal chamber. Their occupants, elders of Felian bloodlines, each bearing centuries of secrets, watched the hologram shimmer to life at the center of the hall. Qix'ala's transmission began to play. No introduction, no pretense. Just images, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. Assassins breaching the birthing chamber. Screams, flames. Human medical logs cross-referenced with Felian military orders. DNA overlays of the relic's pulse synchronizing with the hybrid fetus. And then the command log: eliminate all unauthorized hybrids. Secure or destroy relic carriers. Signed by Fox himself. The chamber trembled with silence. Tavarin was the first to speak. This is not forgery. The chain is authenticated, another elder confirmed. Quantum sealed. Verified twice. Then came the voice of Fox, arrogant, sharp. Are we to allow an unsanctioned experiment to threaten our bloodlines? The child must die. So must she. The final image, the explosion at Outpost Iran, and Qix'ala's voice. I invoke the trial of fire. Let Felian justice see truth, even if it burns down the throne. A storm stirred in the room. Some elders looked horrified, others angry. A few glanced toward an empty throne Fox's. He had not come. He would not come. Cowards didn't face fire. They only sent it. Meanwhile, far above in the orbital path, Reed and Qix'ala waited in silence aboard the battered shuttle. Its hull barely held together by willpower and patched metal. But it had survived long enough. She stared through the viewport, watching the golden planet below spin slowly. You're quiet, Reed said. I just committed treason on a planetary scale, she replied. I've seen worse first dates. She didn't smile. He leaned forward. If they reject your trial, they won't, she said. Not all of them. Some still remember what honor means. Reed swallowed. And if they do, Qix'ala turned. Then we land. And we don't ask any more. Back in the tribunal, debate erupted. Elder Saj kept pounding his staff against the ground. You want us to rewrite the charter over one child, a human child? Not a child, Elder Urin replied. A hybrid bearing resonance with the relic. That hasn't happened since the Rift War. That matters. It's an anomaly. It's a sign. We risk civil war. No, we risk extinction if we bury this truth. Tavarin stood. Enough. The trial has been invoked. We have two choices. We uphold its sanctity, or we kill the idea of justice for good. One by one, the elders cast their votes. 7 for trial, 5 against. The majority had spoken. The Citadel's flame altar ignited. The ritual flame, untouched for 2 centuries, roared to life, summoned by decree. Its heat licked the ceiling blue and gold and ancient, a signal to the galaxy. The trial had begun. On the shuttle, Qix'ala received the encoded confirmation. She exhaled sharply. They're doing it. Reed smiled faintly. And now, we descend. Citadel airspace was tightly controlled, but the trial gave her rights even Fox couldn't erase. Shields deactivated. Landing Bay 3 opened. Their shuttle, wounded and blackened, touched down like a ghost from war. A silent guard met them, not to arrest, to escort. Through golden halls they walked Reed, limping Qix'ala upright but battle-worn. Her coat still burned, her weapons holstered. The chamber doors opened. 12 elders, 1 tribunal flame, 1 final chance. Qix'ala stepped into the circle. She didn't bow. She didn't kneel. She simply stood. You know me, she said. Or you thought you did. Daughter of House Varel, 1 elder said, voice neutral. I am not my house. I am what it failed to be. Silence. You saw the footage, the orders, the blood. This is no longer about a relic. This is about what kind of species we become, one that kills what it fears, or one that grows beyond it. She gestured to Reed. This man risked everything for a child not yet born, not because he believed in prophecy, because he believed in choice. And I watched my own kind try to murder that choice in cold blood. Tavarin stepped forward. Do you accuse Lord Fox of betrayal? I accuse him of cowardice, she snapped. He sent killers, not questions. He buried evidence. He weaponized doctrine. And he forgot what it means to lead. The flame pulsed brighter. You stand before us as both accused and accuser, another elder said. I stand before you as the last Felian who still bleeds for what matters. Tavarin raised his staff. Very well. Let the circle deliberate. Qix'ala and Reed were escorted outside. They waited. The walls felt cold. Reed broke the silence. You really meant that about being the last? She looked at him. I hope I'm wrong. Hours passed. Then the door reopened. They were summoned. Tavarin's voice rang out. The circle has spoken. Lord Fox is to be stripped of title and arrested. His actions violate the Concordat. The hybrid child is to be protected. The relic research declassified. The trial of fire stands fulfilled. Qix'ala didn't breathe. Reed gripped her hand. Tavarin finished, and Commander Qix'ala is hereby restored. Your exile ends. A murmur ran through the chamber. She stepped forward. I don't want restoration. I want reform. He smiled faintly, then lit it. The fire behind her roared not as judgment but as rebirth. The war wasn't over, but it had finally been named. The awakening. The chamber was silent, not with fear, but with reverence. Outside the citadel, the planet's twin suns began to rise. Their light filtered through crystalline towers, casting shifting halos across the plaza below. Crowds had gathered not to protest, not to burn, but to witness. Something old was ending. Something unknown had begun. In the inner sanctum, Reed sat beside the medpod. Its interior glowed softly, shielding the tiny form within. The child. Their child still unborn, yet already the epicenter of a galaxy's reckoning. Machines hummed gently, syncing its vitals with a protective cocoon of energy. It was no longer just a human fetus. It was bonded to the relic, to something beyond. Qix'ala stood nearby, armored but unarmed. The new council had offered her protection command, even vengeance. She refused all of it. I don't need a title, she'd said. I just need to see what we fought for survive. Tavarin entered cloak, trailing behind him, ceremonial but light. No more pomp, no more shadows. It's time, he said. Reed blinked. Time for what? The Ascension Protocol. Tavarin replied, the relic, it's responding. The relic was no longer stored in vaults or guarded behind fields. It floated now, suspended above the med pod, pulsing in rhythm with the child's heartbeat. It's not just reacting, Qix'ala said softly. It's protecting. Reed stood slowly facing the relic. What does it want? Tavarin's expression softened. Want no. It remembers. What? Our oldest texts speak of the relics as vaults of history, living memory. They don't choose. They resonate with minds that mirror their pain, their hope, their defiance. And the child, Reed asked. The first vessel in millennia with enough chaos and clarity to bear it. A hum grew in the air, low, steady, primal. The relic descended not by command, but intention. It hovered just inches above the med pod, then slowly phased through the energy field. Light filled the room, blinding, golden warm. The child moved. Not a kick. A stretch deliberate. The pod's monitors spiked. Neural activity surged. Reed staggered back. Qix'ala's eyes widened. The baby's eyes opened. It shouldn't have been possible. Not yet. Not for weeks. But they were open and glowing. A mix of human blue and Felian violet, refracted by something ancient, something other. It looked at Reed, and he felt it, not words, not images, but weight. A pressure behind his eyes. Thoughts not his own. Memories not his. He saw worlds burn. Empires rise. A mother screaming as soldiers took her child. A Felian elder standing against tyranny. A lone pilot guiding evacuees through a collapsing wormhole. All of them fighting, failing, hoping. He collapsed to one knee, tears in his eyes. What is it showing you? Qix'ala whispered. Everything, he gasped. Every soul who ever tried to do the right thing and paid for it. The relic fused fully with the child, its form dissolving into stardust that wove into the infant's skin, and then silence. No hum, no glow, just peace. The pod shut down, no longer needed. The child breathed. Qix'ala moved, first stepping to the pod. Slowly, reverently, she reached in and lifted the baby into her arms. No cry, just calm. The infant reached up and touched her face. Qix'ala, the warrior who had carved through death itself, fell to her knees. Reed joined her. The three of them huddled on the sanctum floor, not as rebels or relics, but as a family. Tavarin watched, unmoving. What do we do now? We raise her, Qix'ala said. Not as a weapon, not as a symbol, as a child. Who will choose who she becomes? And if others try to control her, Tavarin asked. Reed met his gaze. They'll answer to us. Outside, the suns reached their apex. The plaza below erupted not in chaos, but in song. A Felian rite once banned by the old regime, now echoing freely the song of first light. A hymn not to gods or generals, but to beginnings. Every starship in orbit paused its transit. Every transmission network rerouted to the council feed. And across 5 systems, every child born that hour was given the same middle name, Ashari Felian, for the one who bridges. A new calendar year was declared not by decree, but by consensus. Year 1, era of Concord. But history, as always, carried shadows. Some whispered that the child was a curse, that peace would not last, that too much power in one soul invited ruin. And in a dark corner of the galaxy, a rogue fleet intercepted the trial transmission. Their admiral, A scarred human with eyes like frost smiled bitterly. Looks like the game just changed, he muttered. Finally, something worth chasing. Back at the Citadel, Qix'ala rocked the child gently, her eyes watching stars rise through the glass ceiling. She doesn't know, she whispered. Reed nodded. That she's already changed everything. No. That she has the right to be just a girl, not a myth. He kissed her forehead. She'll have that chance, even if I have to burn the galaxy to give it to her. The baby's hand closed around Qix'ala's finger, strong, warm, awake, alive, and already watching. The trial was over. The war had paused, but the future had just opened its eyes.